Oh, welcome class. Today we're going to be working on essential question number 3, and that is, what does having a high specific heat mean? That says 2, but really that should be 3. In any case, let's talk about specific heat. Now I know that you have probably heard about the word inertia. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to back up for one moment, and we're going to talk about heat. So first of all, what is heat? If you look at the diagram on the left, we have water at 90 and we have another container of water at 10, and they're separated by a conductor. It says metal. That's to allow the heat to eventually flow. So what is heat? It is a measure of the flow of energy due to temperature differences. Heat always goes from hot to cold. So you can see we have a pretty big temperature differential here, 90 to 10. That means it's going to move fairly quickly. Now if this was 10 and this was 12, that heat will still flow from hot to cold, but a little bit slower. That process will continue until both systems have reached equilibrium. And of course we're assuming equal volumes of water, but I'm not going to get into that too much. Okay, so in your notes, here we have, let me back over to your notes real quick so that you can follow along. And here it is. So what does having a high specific heat mean? So to cut to the chase, this is what it is. Okay. Having a high specific heat basically means that it's the transfer of heat, how slowly or how quickly. It's basically called thermal inertia. So something with a high specific heat, heat is transferred slowly for that substance. Okay. So examples of high specific heat would be ceramic or water, with water being king. Nothing has a higher specific heat value, capacity than water. Okay. And then down here we have examples of low specific heat, wood, sand, dirt, rocks. And that will have implications, as you'll see a little bit further in the slides here. Okay, so back to your notes. You're going to come over. What does having a high specific heat mean? It means that the temperature will rise very, very slowly for that specific substance. Right? So go back over here. Heat is transferred. What I would write down, thermal inertia. So I'm going to come over to the notes. Think thermal inertia. Okay? All right. Let's jump over to the slides. Let's see. So let's go to the next slide here. I'm just going to blow that up for you. So if you take a look at this comparison chart, where the highest by a long stretch is water. Water is more than double of its next closest competitors, which is, well, ice, which is water just in a different phase. After that, you can see it really drops off. We have aluminum, sand, and so on down the line. So you can see it's really not close. Water has a very, very high specific heat value, which has implications for our weather and also for our climate, which we've been talking about on and off throughout the school year. So what we have here, specifically, what does this mean? Okay, so with water, to raise 1 kilogram of water by 1 Kelvin, think temperature scales, we're just going to use Kelvin. To raise 1 kilogram of water, which is not very much, I mean, think of basically a liter by a liter is what that would be. 1,000 milliliters by 1,000 milliliters by 1,000 milliliters. So we have 1 liter of water, and you can see that on the left it takes over 4,000 joules to raise that temperature by 1 Kelvin. Much bigger difference than the other two. Okay, so we already did that. You can click on that if you so desire. Some British guy. Okay. We're not going to do problems. I'm not going to We're not going to do any specific heat problems. It's not hard. All we're looking at here is we have 500 grams or about a pound of dirt, and we have about a pound of water. 500 grams, it's a little over a pound. So they're each absorbing 1,000 calories, right? And we can see that soil has about a specific heat of 0.2. Water has a specific heat of 1. In this case, we're using calories. Still metric. In the end, what happens is we have the soil had a change in temperature, delta T, of 10 degrees C. Right? Water had a change in temperature of 2 degrees C. Remember, same amount of soil, but same amount of water, each absorbed 1,000 calories, and you can see that the water did not move very much at all with respect to the soil. Okay, we already did that. Okay, so specific heat. And at this point, if you want to pause, you may. I might be moving a little bit quickly. So one of the things that you'll hear me mentioning in some future videos, some home casts, is that land and sea, they heat up differently at different rates. So what we're looking at in the top picture here is during the day. If you've ever noticed, if you're at the beach or if you're on a massive lake, as the day progresses, you're going to be getting a nice refreshing sea breeze coming off the water. And that has to do with specific heat, because on the left, the temperature of the land, the sand or whatever it is going to heat up a lot faster than the water. So as that air heats, it's going to rise. And as it rises, it's going to pull in the cool ocean air to fill this vacuum, because Mother Nature doesn't want this to be a void. So as that air rises, something has to come in to replace it, and you get these convection currents. But that causes a breeze, and this is very local. This would be just at the shore, right? And then if you ever noticed at night during the summer when you're at the beach, right, you get a nice cool breeze coming off of the land, and that's because the land cooled off before the ocean has. And that's just for the day. Think about seasons. So, it takes all winter for the oceans to cool off. And that's why our hurricane season extends, basically through November now, because that is when the ocean temperatures are at their hottest from the heating of the summer sun. And, of course, warmer sea temperatures drives energy for storms, meaning hurricanes. So this is more localized right here, but then this happens globally. This explains lake effect snow. Some of you may have ever been to the snow belt of Pennsylvania or western New York State, up around Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. Those areas get heavy amounts of snow, and that's due to lake effect cooling. You can read through this, but basically the lakes have to be unfrozen. And if the lakes are unfrozen, that is a snow machine waiting to happen. And we talk about the snow belt, in case any of you are wondering. These areas that you see on the slide, these are the areas that are classified as a snow belt. And that has to do because you have cold air usually anywhere between November, December, January. Well, I don't even think Lake Erie froze this year. So as long as these lakes are open, and they're free of ice, when that cold air comes across, it's going to pick up that moisture and it's going to dump it on the windward side, which in this case would be Cleveland. Over here is Erie. Here's Erie. Here's Cleveland. And up here, you would have like Buffalo, Syracuse, New York. They get tremendous amounts of snowfall. And that is all due to, uneven heating and cooling here on Earth. So, at this point, I think that's enough. If there's anything else you have any questions about, feel free to contact Mr. Krebs. And also, check out some of the video links that I have. concerning specific heat and weather. One is put out by Penn State Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Sciences, and that's an excellent 2 to 3 minute clip on what lake effect snow is all about.